Oh,
Yeah, you are in the show. Hey,
awesome.
hi.
I think we are live. So let's
Yeah,
give some time for folks to join in.
yeah, yeah. 3 minutes up. Yeah,
Guys, if you can see us and probably hear us properly, just drop a yes in the comments so that we know there are no technical glitches. Awesome. I think we have messages coming in, so I think we are live.
yeah.
Let's wait for another 2 minutes so that we have few more folks joining in. Awesome, great. I think we have a good number of people, so I think we can get started. Welcome everyone for the first edition of Scalar Industry Connect sessions, wherein the intent is to invite recruitment leaders to discuss upon the challenges and, of course, some of the trends in the recruitment domain, and have more like a brainstorming session. Try to understand the views of the industry. And before I get started with the discussion and probably introduce our panelists, I'll quickly introduce myself and Scalar. My name is Naren, and I head the careers business unit at Scalar. For people who are not aware of what we do at Scalar, Scalar is an online tech university wherein we try to upskill software engineers across years of experience. We do have three programs: Scalar Edge, which is focused on upskilling candidates who are still in university. And then we have Scalar Academy, which is focused more on working professionals with 1 to 6 years of experience. And we do have Scalar Plus, which is targeted towards working professionals with 6+ years of experience. And today I have with me two very renowned recruitment leaders that I really look up to. I'm sure a lot of people who have joined us today know Mohit and Savitha very well. And that's one of the reasons why we are seeing a great turnout today. So I'll quickly introduce Mohit first. Mohit heads the recruitment function at Societe Generale, and he comes with more than 17 years of experience in the recruitment space. Prior to Societe Generale, he has been with Capgemini and Barclays. And I think one interesting fact about Mohit, which probably not a lot of people would know about, is he's a great music lover and also a very good photographer. And Mohit, thanks for joining us today. I think it would be great if you can quickly say hi to all our viewers and probably quickly introduce yourself as well.
Thanks, Naren. Good morning, all. It's such a pleasure to be part of this session. Look forward to it, and let's have a very interactive session.
Awesome. Thanks, Mohit. So I'll quickly introduce Savitha as well. Savitha heads the talent acquisition function at ThoughtWorks. And she comes with more than 20 years of experience and has been very instrumental in building teams for companies like IBM, Oracle, and Yahoo. And Savitha is someone who has also been a great D&I advocate. I think ThoughtWorks definitely needs no introduction in the sort of impact they have created in the diversity space. And then, of course, attracting some really good technology talent, and due credit should definitely be given to Savitha for making that happen. Savitha, thanks a lot for accepting our invite and joining us today. So I think if you also can just quickly say hi and probably introduce yourself, we'll right away get into the discussion.
Yeah. First of all, good morning, everyone. And Naren, big thank you to you and Scalar for inviting me to this event. So thank you, everyone, for joining. I think we, like Mohit mentioned, we want to make this an interactive session where we can share our ideas and also learn from you guys. So yeah, keep your questions coming, and yeah, we can get started.
Awesome, awesome, great. So I think without any further delay, we'll get into discuss a couple of questions that I have. But of course, I mean, throughout the discussion, any sort of questions that you would want to ask the panelists we have today, please put the questions in the comment box. I think towards the end of the session, we'll be picking up few questions and definitely try and best to answer as many as possible depending on the time we have. And Mohit, the first question is something that I actually have for you. The last 1 year has been very interesting, right? We have seen things right from, let's say, hiring freezes to companies going completely virtual in terms of recruitment. Going by your observation and experience, do you think companies are going to see a lot of strategic sense in completely moving to a virtual recruitment mode, or do you also sense any pitfalls in this? And then I'm talking about the future, right? From now, do you see any pitfalls, or do you think it makes a lot of strategic sense?
Sure, Naren. I think that's very relevant question in the current context. So our experience, right? I mean, if you look at it, there is no straight answer to this. When my recommendation is to look at a hybrid model. If you look at the last few months, many of the organizations either slowed down the hiring or completely shut down the hiring,
Right.
Which has changed now in a very positive way. Many of the organizations have committed for at least an average of 14% growth. We, of course, as a community, we quickly adopted to virtual mode of recruitment, but I think it was also the scale which allowed us to, and the scale and the demand was quite spread, right? So it allowed
Right.
us to quickly implement it. But my personal view is that the scalability would be a big question mark, especially for the organizations who have been started seeing surge in the demand. When we look at a virtual mode of hiring, it essentially has to be evaluated thoroughly by considering the context, and it could be in this form of the size of the organization, the nature of hiring we do, and so on and so forth. And I'll give you a few examples as well.
Right.
Let's look at campus recruitment, right? I mean, our relationship with the universities, and we're recruiting young graduates from the campuses. That, for sure, we adopted technology. Many of the organizations adopted technology a few years back. So pandemic, of course, helped us to accelerate that. But that is something where we certainly see for us to continue the virtual hiring mode, right? And we continue to recruit through that, right? Because assessment anyways used to happen through technology, and now we have multiple technology solutions available which allow us to interview the candidates virtually and take calls, right?
Right.
That's number one. Now, coming to the leadership and the lateral hiring is where my recommendation would be to switch back into meet and assess model, where we, and especially give you an example of, let's say, many of the organizations who have been week on week recruiting talent by virtue of interview drives, or what we call as batch events, right? Where we bring in some 100 candidates on Saturday, bring in a set of interviewers, organize this for 7-8 hours, and end of it, we have few people whom we offer the very next week, right? Now, if you look at that as a scenario and try to do it virtually, it requires a huge logistics support to make this happen. Just imagine you actually have a multiple rounds of interview to happen on the same day. It was easy to on the floor to move the candidate from one room to the other room, but doing it virtually requires a lot of efforts. Not only from an effort standpoint, it also leads to an impact on the experience and then the individual. And typically from an Indian mindset as well, I think we prefer to meet and talk, right? That has been a culture, that is something which we have been tuned to. So to my mind, I think even from the career fair, right, which used to be went aggressive in the last 3-4 years, and again, these conferences could be of various nature and especially focus on the diversity space, right? that's gonna come back. I mean, that I don't think virtually would be a good because these conferences are not just to hire, right? These conferences also to engage with your industry colleagues,
Right.
experience it, evaluate, let people know about you, and then you recruit, right? So that's
Right.
something I believe has to be get back into the physical conferences mode and not virtually. So yeah, in some, I suggest my recommendation would be to go into the hybrid model, a mix of it, and take a call basis the nature of hiring and stuff, right? At the
Right.
same time, I also recommend the organizations to look at various technology solutions which allow or enable the organization to trim the funnel, right? One of
Right.
the fundamental problems in the industry and has been there for long is, I can't interview 100 people to get 10. Can I interview 150 to 10, take 10, right? So look at technology solution which allows to thin that funnel, and then we meet those 50 people in person to select 10, right, instead of we doing it 100. Even the telephonic interviews, right, all these years would actually translate into video interviews now. So that's something which is doable. So
True.
these are my views, Naren, to your question.
Great, Mohit. I definitely agree to what you're saying, right? I think there are two components to this. One is definitely from a cost perspective, probably virtual recruitment might reduce your overall cost. But then there is a second component of experience or the way you attract great talent. And definitely, like you mentioned, these physical events were always giving a channel to talk about what you do as a company and build those relations, especially with a lot of passive talent. Because today the actual good talent is majorly the passive market. And of course, going completely virtual increases the barrier there. So I completely
Absolutely.
get where
And I
you're
think,
coming.
in the months to come, candidates also would prefer to meet and influence rather than, struggling in the front of the screen.
Correct, correct. 100% agreed. So which takes me to the second question. Of course, both Savitha, Mohit, both of you can chip in. Do you foresee a future where probably digital recruitment needs very little or probably no human intervention? Or do you think we still need a great component of human in the entire recruitment process? So do you think that eventually the industry is going to go there, or probably even a decade from now, you still see that there is human intervention required?
Yeah, I can slip in my thoughts here. So, Naren, what I personally think is that human intervention, if you want a one-line answer, no, it's not going to go away. At least not in my opinion. Mainly because if you look around with all the digital, interventions that we're doing and digitalizing recruitment to a large extent, the human intervention anyway has reduced to a lot, right? And now what makes one organization different from the other is only in the experience what the candidate gets. So the candidate experience should be the center of your focus of your interview process. So when I say candidate experience, it doesn't mean only for people who we are selecting, but overall, anyone who walks into your organization or comes to an interview should feel valued, and they should
True.
go away feeling that they made best use of their time. Because even a candidate who does not get to an interview process is an ambassador of your company. They're going to go out and talk about it to 100 other people. And a lot of them, if you give them good experience, may actually take up the feedback, what we have given them, and learn and come back and reapply to us. And that is what I have also seen in my experience at ThoughtWorks in the last 6 years, that we have a lot of people who come back to us after who had applied to us 2 or 3 years ago, because they liked the process, because they liked the way they were treated, they liked the way the
Right.
interview process happened, and the opportunity they got to showcase their talent and showcase their skills. Rather than focusing on, you tell us what we want, we try and focus on what you know, right? So what happens is, and all this requires a bit of human intervention. You cannot do it completely remote, or sorry, with digital. So I think while a lot of repetitive tasks are going to get digitalized, like resume searching or finding the hidden talent, or sourcing, a lot of assessment, selection process, the early part of the process where you do selection process,
Right.
or even the later part when you have to send out offers, when you have to keep in touch with candidates, maybe all that can be digitalized, and we can talk. But then the candidate experience per se, And the second thing is also on the stakeholder management. See, we should know that talent acquisition or recruiting is a partnership between the hiring managers and the TA team.
Right.
So we having this good stakeholder management, making them understand what is the availability of the candidates, being a talent advisor, that will not happen without having a human intervention. So I think while a lot of the repetitive tasks are definitely going to be digitalized, completely doing away with human intervention may not really happen, at least in the near future, unless you're talking of something 10 years down the road, when we have robots walking around and just humans. But yes, but that's a very far off. And there are a lot of industries, right? One size does not fit all. So there are a lot of industries which hire in larger volumes, where they need more of digitalization, and certain companies which, especially in the leadership and senior hiring, where you may want people to intervene and sell your company and then talk and give a good experience to the candidate, and also do a good employer branding before you can hire people.
Definitely, Savita. I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think at the end of the day, recruitment has a lot of human component involved, and as long as that experience is missing, I think it's not going to work out. And only if probably the AI systems that we have today become as smart as humans, I think probably that's when we can completely remove the human component. But I would love to hear thoughts from Mohit as well.
Yeah, so I mean, completely aligned to what Savitha said. Um, See, in India, a career or a job is very emotional attachment to the families, right? I mean, I still remember when the first time I got a job and I called my parents to tell them that they were pretty happy, and they told, the friends and families around about the placement, right? So it is still there, and I think anything which requires a human interaction, right, requires a human interventions. That's how I look at it. Anything which doesn't require a human interaction, which means it could be your bulk resume screening, or interview scheduling, or for the fact that automating the job postings and so on and forth. I think that's something which there is a good opportunity, and I think we have made a good progress in the last 5-7 years on leveraging technology to automate and digitalize that. But anything which requires human interactions, we have to be there. Um, just a cue from what Savitha also said about the stakeholder management, right? I think gone are these days when recruiter would sit at the corner and just source and resume, right? We now moving to business partnership roles, right? When it's a business partnership, it's all about you talking to your hiring manager, you talking to the requesters and explaining the market context, explaining what can be done, what cannot be done, and work along with them to hire, right? So to my mind, it's a no-brainer. Everything cannot be automated, right? I mean, it requires human touch for sure. I mean, I'll give you one more example, which happened in our own organization. This year we introduced. We did a very simple thing, right? And when we made offers last year to the students from the campuses, right? On same day, in the end of the day, our recruiters picked up the phone, had a video call with their parents, congratulating them about their success of their awards, right? I think that was such a small move, big impact in terms of very emotional connect with this. I think that's what people also look forward to, right? I mean, it's not about
Right.
you just send an email congratulating somebody, just pick up the phone and talk to you, makes a lot of difference. So yeah, I mean, so I completely align to what Savitha said. Yeah.
100% worth. In fact, this is something that we see on our day-to-day operations in Scalar, right? When we place one of our learner, let's say who has been working in the services domain, and it's very difficult for them to get into the product or the captive space unless and until
Absolutely.
they have their skills intact. So the moment they see a great offer coming their way, and they write a really good email to us, and in most of the cases we ensure that our team is also reaching out to these people and thanking for them to be part of the Scalar alumni family. So like you said, I think that the small gestures definitely has like a very large impact. and that is something that I 100% agree with. So in short, probably what I understand is there are multiple functions of recruitment, right from your talent attraction to, let's say, talent engagement, talent onboarding. So that takes me to the next question, right? Probably Savitha, you can chip in. What are some of the areas in the overall recruitment cycle that you think that technology has a very huge role to play and probably requires a lot of technology interventions?
Yeah, good question, Naren. So I think a lot of the repetitive tasks you can be can where is place where we can use technology, like Mohit mentioned about bulk screening of resumes, of using AI ML techniques to find passive candidates, right? Then sourcing is one place where you can really use a lot of technology, and you can use it for screening to a large extent. You're doing your first level of screening, and also during the offer sending out process, automating some messages to the candidates or the client, talking about the offer, those kind of things, and are using a very smart ATS. These days applicant tracking systems are really of the second generation kind, which are very intelligent. They're no longer places where you just go and dump your CV, but you can manage your entire like recruitment life cycle on that, right from sourcing to screening to onboarding. And these are the places where definitely you can use technology. Candidate rediscovery, where you go and look at your own candidates who applied to you in the past. That is another good place to do. So one of the ways where we use in ThoughtWorks, where we use a lot of technology in our recruiting process. And one of the other things what I've seen with the ATS, what we use is that it gives us an ability to tag candidates based on what interview stage they were rejected at. So what happens is we started this project called Silver Medalist Project, where we are going back to a year ago for candidates who almost made it to the last part of the process but could not get in for some small reasons. No, they got rejected. So we have this huge pool of candidates who already know about a company, who have gone through the process, who had interest. So the job selling and talking about the benefits of joining a company becomes very simple for the recruiter. All we need to do is to go and talk to them, and then there'll be a lot of in that maybe out of 100 people, a small percentage of them will be still looking for a job or would be interested in the process. And then
Right.
we can have lightweight process for them because we've already interviewed them. We were sufficiently convinced, but there was only a small gap. So all these kind of interventions to scale your hiring will not happen if you don't have technology interventions.
Right.
So we can think of all these, every company, if you just look into your applicant tracking system, will have at least minimum 10 to 15,000 resumes if you are hiring for the last 4 5 years, right? But how do you make use of that? How do you recycle and how do you bring them back? So all these things are physically not possible. Like you can't have an army of recruiters sitting and doing that, and it's impossible to track it in Excel sheets and Google spreadsheets. So those are the areas where you can use intelligence software to help you make better decisions, to help you to help you get good candidates and scale your hiring, and also get in good talent into your organization. The other place where I see technology playing a big role is talent analytics, and that has been in that's been a buzzword for quite some time now in the industry. But if you look at talent analytics, it really makes your life easy. It's all about how do you plan your hiring in advance, how do you make your hiring or more predictive in nature, so that your business knows what to expect from the recruitment team. It is no longer a situation where you just post and pray and you hope the right
Correct.
person walks your door and then you make an offer, right?
True.
It's more predictable, and it helps in both capacity planning for your team, and it also helps in workforce planning, workforce management. So those are the areas where we should pick up and make sure that we use technology. If we aren't using, if you want to start, if you don't know where to start, I think making just a laundry list of all the activities what you do in the recruitment function, and looking at the ones that are repetitive, where you need, which is more human labor intensive, pick those and bring technology there, and then enable your recruiters to make smart decisions. And using technology, like Mohit mentioned, how do you make the funnel small? Like you don't show 150 people to get one offer, rather you have 5 people and make one. So all that will not happen if you don't use the right technology solutions. And that is where we should know where to spend your dollars, where you spend your money, and and get in technology and enable your recruiters to do a better job of candidate management, in stakeholder management, become talent advisors, right? So you up the game by using technology. Yeah, those are my.
Awesome. I completely agree, Savita, and that takes me to a very interesting question. But before that, there are a couple of interesting comments. So Mohit, Avra Majumdar says such a great gesture from the TA team, calling parents and sharing the good news. So I think that's something that I really liked what you have done, and Savita, in line to what you were saying, Tirunarayanan says that I completely agree on the candidate experience, irrespective of the selected candidate or not suitable candidate. Giving honest feedback to the candidates and sharing the areas of improvement should be the key to carry organizations' brand by word of mouth.
Yeah,
Um,
yes,
so I
definitely.
think
Plus something to
a
that.
lot of viewers in agreement to what we are discussing. So this is great. So since we are talking about ATS data analytics, Mohit, I do know that you are someone who is very much interested in this particular topic. So any interesting things that you can share how you have been effectively using your data, candidate data, in terms of their feedback or experience, or in terms of the talent pool that you have, to make any sort of impactful recruitment decision. So any interesting use cases around it would be helpful.
Yeah, so Naren, and before I comment on, am I audible?
Yes, Mohit.
Okay. Yeah, before I comment on that, just to continue to what Savita said, I think there are some areas where the industry has made a good progress, especially on the application process, screening and assessment, virtual onboarding. Yeah, so these are some of the areas where technology has played a role. Some of the areas where probably in the next couple of years where we start seeing more traction is recruitment analytics. I think we speak a lot, but we don't do on the ground. To be honest, we still in the phase of data and reporting, and not really into the analytics. Right, the real use of analytics has been limited, and I think could be in some of the organizations, but not all. And branding, talent attraction, and engagement is another area where we have still not started leveraging AR, VR to position the organization better in the market. And third is the leveraging blockchain on background verification. I'm sure many of the people in the room must have heard about it, but this is still in the experimental mode today,
Right.
right? So there are 2-3 areas where I still see a scope and could be the progression for the industry. Now, especially on the recruitment analytics, right from the very start. And I remember there was a something called as when I started career, job white or something, which basically gives you a view of the traffic, right? In terms of who are the people who are getting attracted towards your social media posts, etc. And that gives you insight on who are your
Right.
what's your target population, how you should do, and all that, right? So using the data to find your target population, to find how to reach to them, data to predict who are the people who are going to join, who are more interested, data, descriptive analytics to figure out what's the correlation between educational background to the success, to the performance of the employees, correlation between innovation score in an organization to the diversity, correlation between the circuit versus non-circuit branch students and the performance. Still, I think many of the organizations in the industry have been going to the campuses looking at circuit branches, because the mere assumption is that anybody who's learned computer, who's currently studying computers, can actually be a good programmer. But there could be few surprises. Recently we hired some people from the top engineering colleges for a accelerator program, and 6 of the 8 of those people, right, come from textile, chemical, mechanical, and that background, right, and strong programmers. So I think this is where you can use data more effectively to take decisions. It's been happening in a bits and pieces. It's not happening too structured. But I think the right progression should be structure your data, use right visual platforms, could be Tableau and others, to start reporting, graduate into command center where you have a real-time view to what's happening in your space, and then use this data to start analytics. And again, analytics progression has to be starting with a descriptive, and then you move into predictive analytics, right? I think that's the way I look at how recruitment industries should progress, and how the HR technology firms should collaborate with the TA organizations to help leveraging technologies and taking the hiring decisions, right? And I think diversity specifically is a very untouched area where technology has been used. And Naren, you and I discussed this a couple
Right.
of times earlier as well, right? How technology can help the organization to move away from just running diversity agenda from a target standpoint to to really understand, is this really helping me to add the value or to add a revenue, or to be more innovative, right? I think that's
Right.
where the technology can the data analytics can be used.
Right. True. And I also remember, Mohit, a couple of months back, we were also discussing about how all the companies are going to, let's say, Bangalore or Delhi NCR or Pune. But we do have a lot of technology talent
Yeah,
in the Northeast, which is completely untapped. So it would be very interesting if you can talk a little bit about it, because
yeah.
that's a interesting fact even I have come across, and I think that that's something which we should definitely discuss on.
Yeah, I think it's again a myth, right? I think it's a myth that people who are sitting in the metros, and especially the Bangalore, the Pune, Hyderabad, yeah, these are the people who could actually fit your roles. But when we look at some of the results of the, in pan India hackathons organized, right, by various firms in India, right, most of the top three come from the colleges which you probably do either we do not know or we have not visited, right? And these are the people, because of personal reasons, etc., they decide to work in a place close to their
Right.
hometown, right? It could be, places like Jaipur, Chandigarh, uh, Ahmedabad, Indore, even Northeast, right? I think there is a good talent. Now,
Yeah.
with the technology, and especially our experience in the pandemic of how to leverage technology to
Right.
reach out to the talent sitting remote, right? I think we should leverage it to have a set agenda to recruit some of this talent from these locations as well. And I think that's very much doable with the technology today in place, right?
True.
And yeah, I mean, primarily start with the very generic skills, evaluate, and then scale it up.
True.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think.
Just to add to what Mohit said, I think we have been very successful in hiring grads for the last 5 years from Northeast, and we regularly hire from places like Indore, Trivandrum, and Kochi, where we
Yeah,
find very good talent. Jaipur as well. So it's been really, really good.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Even
what.
from a diversity agenda standpoint, Naren, I mean,
True.
I think industry is still stuck fundamentally on gender and graduate into PWD and to the LGBTQ sides, right? But I think there's a lot more to explore, right? Economic diversity, regional diversity, and I think TA professionals should really contribute towards some of these missions.
Right.
Yeah,
And I
geographical
do think
diversity.
ThoughtWorks has been focusing on this area. Probably Savitha
Yeah,
can talk
yeah.
more about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think geographical diversity is something what we really, really look for, and hiring people from the tier two, tier three cities. It's like not focusing completely on that, and that brings a lot of a different flavor to the organization, to the workforce in the organization. Bringing people from various, it becomes a more heterogeneous culture rather than a homogeneous one. So yes, a big plus one to bringing people from different parts of India, or if you have the opportunity, then hire from Nepal and Sri Lanka, where there's very, very good talent available. Just so if there are organizations wanting to look at, Nepal is a great place. Kathmandu is a hub of startups. So
Great, great. I think definitely COVID has helped to a certain extent in terms of companies also going out and probably exploring candidates without the location hurdle. So now, I mean, since we have discussed where technology should be applied in the overall recruitment cycle, that brings me to the second question. I think technology will definitely help in two things. One is the scale part, And the second is the cost part. So Savita, can you also talk a little bit about how technology has been very crucial in probably impacting the overall recruitment cost, probably for ThoughtWorks or any of the case studies that you can probably quote?
Yeah, sure. In terms, look, I don't look at technology only in terms of cost reduction. It's also about efficiency and increasing the speed,
True.
and also and also making our recruiters more productive. So overall, using technology, at least in for the last 3-4 years, what I have seen in my experience at ThoughtWorks is that it's really made a dependency on having very over the top large teams. It's brought down the numbers. We really want to look at recruiters who can be talent advisors, and also give let the recruiters build the experience of being talent advisors, rather than just we do a postman job of sending resumes from one inbox to another. So overall, both in terms of cost, efficiency, predictability in hiring, workforce management, those are all the other benefits what we have got by using technology, and not just the cost part, but efficiency and speed, predictability are three other important factors, and also bringing down the time to hire, because we are using tech, so the SLAs get shorter, and bringing people on board gets easier.
Great, great. So I think since we are running out of time, I just have one last question, and probably Mohit and Savita, feel free to chip in whatever thoughts you have. And this is a question which is very close to my heart, something that I keep pondering upon a lot. And interestingly, someone in our viewers also have put up the similar question. So technology is very interesting, right? I mean, you can use it either for good or bad. And if I talk about the current analytics or probably the AI engines which are there in recruitment, most of it are built on the existing ATS data that you have. So do you think technology is probably bringing in a lot of bias, or do you think technology is probably removing the unconscious bias? Because I see two different perspectives, and both seem to be very true for me. So would be happy to understand your thoughts.
Maybe I can go first. Naren, it's a brilliant space to discuss. Um, I think I'm with the view that technology has been helping us to cut down the bias, right? I mean, largely, but it also depends on the organization, on their maturity to understand how to leverage it, how to make your system learn in order to function in a way that it addresses the problem statement, right? Now, there could be organizations who would have, in a rush, implemented, let's say, search and match engine, and thinking about, okay, let's look at an accuracy as the key parameter on which we're going to assess the performance of the technology solution, right? But
Right.
over a period of time, they realize that it is not helping us from the addressing the bias, right, to in the process, right? So at the start itself, how do you make your that AI based system to learn the data, and that data input has to be right. The sample data for any machine to learn is very crucial, right? So I think,
True.
and that should not only come from the users of it, it also has to be the suppliers of these softwares should advise the organization to ensure the right data for the system to learn and behave accordingly, right? At the same time, there are technology solutions, though I have not experienced it personally, but I've been hearing about technology solutions which help us to make your job description cut on those word specific, and and so on and so forth. But I think it's a mix of it, but it's more about how do you leverage it, right?
True.
Yeah,
So I think you
yeah.
might like to add, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, plus one to what Mohit just said. I definitely think that it has helped in reducing the unconscious bias, because one of the things that we do in ThoughtWorks, because we send out assessments to candidates, is that when we do code reviews, we do these blind code reviews where we don't disclose the name of the candidate so that there
Right.
is no bias coming in, right? They'll not look at who is this person. They just a code assessment. So then these blind code reviews have really helped in reducing the bias. The other thing is also like what Mohit mentioned. There are these tools, although we don't use it here in ThoughtWorks, which will make your resumes, your job descriptions gender neutral. So that means that everyone will be encouraged to apply to your jobs when you have a job description like that. Then the other place where like see, I'm a strong believer in saying that all the people who you source for your particular requirement should not just come from sourcing passive candidates. There should be
Right.
a balance, right? So we follow this process of saying 30, 30, 30. That is a 30% inbounds, 30% outbounds, and 30% referrals. And of course,
Right.
a 10% can come from your contractor conversions or inter department transfers and things like that. So when you say your 30% outbounds, where do you look for passive candidates or outbound candidates where you use this kind of technology to find passive people? These are mostly for all niche hiring, right? If you
Right.
want to simply hire 2 to 4 years experience Java developers, I don't think you need to use some majorly intelligent software or tool. You can find
Right.
them through referrals, you can find them through your inbounds, you can find them through
True.
various ways. So you need to know where to apply it, right? When
Right.
technology is given to you, we apply the context of your organization, apply the context of the jobs, or
Mm.
what kind of people you're hiring, and then
Correct.
use technology. So when you look for passive candidates, you're looking for, say, a very esoteric data scientist or something. That time it
Mhm.
doesn't matter whether it's what is the gender of the person, right, or
Correct.
what's the background of the person. We just want that person who has that talent from wherever. So you don't have to worry so much about biases then. But at the same time, if you're hiring a lot of people from campus or you're hiring people at a junior level, then there it does matter. If there's unconscious bias, you hire only one kind of people, or you find that you have an affinity for hiring only certain colleges or certain type of people. Certain people went to certain schools, so those things might not be very useful. That will definitely bring a bias. So it's very contextual. We need to apply the context of your organization, your ex, and then take a call where you want to apply this technology. So and at the end, I always believe the human mind is more superior to any of the technology that we have. So we need to
True.
apply that and then make use of it. So yeah, definitely there are tools available which will reduce unconscious bias, because people, there's so much of talk about it. And using data for good, right? How do you use your data for good rather than see bringing in all the bias in your systems?
And that leads to an idea as well, Naren. It could be use case of a software which could be integrated with, let's say, Microsoft Outlook, which scans through your exchanges with a set of people or the candidates,
Right.
and end of the month give you an insight and recommendation on to the recruiter or the individual to what actually you're doing wrong and what should be the right way of doing it. Right. I think at least I have personally not come across a software solution like this. So people in the room who are being with HR tech companies or leading it, I think that's one of the very interesting use case. Same goes with a software which could be integrated with ATS
Yeah.
and silently scan through everything, which is all the transactions, and give recommendation to the function about what are some of the things which is really impacting your inclusion as a mission, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
And also, as an organization, if you have a diversity inclusion mission or a focus or a goal, it always makes sense to have a special focus on that, rather than and say that, like, next year I'm going to increase my workforce with diversity or gender diversity or any kind of diversity you're looking at by 20% or 30%. Have a goal towards it. Then you'll work towards it and you'll use all the possible options to make that happen. Yeah, so blindly applying technology is not what I would definitely recommend. And it's always
very
good to do a
true.
trial for 3 to 6 months and then adopt it.
Correct. I think very well put, Savitha and Mohit. I think it's very, very contextual. And at the end of the day, definitely common sense is something that we have to use and decide
Yeah,
whether it's for good or bad. And probably the other piece of this is definitely bringing in a little bit of awareness. Probably when a company is using a technology solution, it's important to understand how the data sets are basically trained, and how was that particular vendor basically trying to eliminate certain unconscious bias. So I think it's probably a two-edged sword which needs to be used effectively as and when needed. But great, I think this was a very wonderful discussion, and I'm really excited to pop up some of the questions that our viewers have been asking. So one question, in fact, there are two questions which are partly related to each other. The first one is asked by EV Srinivas Raju. Apart from the leadership hiring roles, I would be curious to hear from Savitha Mohit about tweaking or rewriting the education criteria if we find great coding talent in undergraduates and working towards hiring such talent. And the
Yeah.
other question that we also have is from Abrar. How do you see organizations effectively using technology to upskill, reskill employees in a virtual world and ensure same or probably better outcomes?
Yeah, I think I can take the first question. I think that's a good one. That you look for people rewriting the education requirement, right? So certainly yes, there are many areas or many companies that are already doing it, that are not really looking at the education criteria to be to be the gate selection criteria for bringing in people. But then again, it depends on for the roles that you're hiring. If it doesn't see, most of the time we end up looking at education criteria because of the travel required, or because if you're working with a client, then the client might need somebody with this kind of a background. Or when you're applied to a particular kind of a visa, if you have to send your if you have to send your people to your client locations, then that education criteria might be a stumbling block if they don't meet the
Right.
basic ones, right? There are a lot of rules for all these visas that are there, which define the education as well. So those are that is why there are a lot of companies are paying more attention to education criteria. But of course, if you're if your organization permits that, and you're say you're a product if you're into a product engineering company, you're not into services, and you're not working with clients directly, then finding great coding talent matters. It doesn't matter what the education criteria is of the person. So yeah, certainly yes, it definitely makes sense
Yeah.
in tweaking it.
The way I
Yeah.
Raju, to your question, and I think very interesting question, would address in our organization is by providing the data set, right? And I give an example of recently when we recruited a few interns for an accelerator program. We realized that the people who finally clear the process were the people who would not come from a non-circuit branches, right? And what we did immediately after this, we analyzed the entire funnel from the point of how many people applied to people who cleared the first round, second round, third round, fourth round, right? And gave that insight to a business, saying, the the education background doesn't really matter, right? So for us to make that change, success stories supported by data is extremely essential. The other way to do this is also look at your entire head count of an organization. Let's say in our organization, if we have 9,000 people, we use analytics to correlate between their performance scores, which in the 1 and 2 raters, and their education background, and see if there's any specific insight which we could leverage to tweak the requirement itself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But but
Yeah.
but I personally believe that we are in the era where we should really move away from by looking at talent by virtue of what education background is. Still, I mean, and I don't want to shy away from this, but many of the organizations still go to the campuses, give the top job offer, job profile to the top college. But that's how we segregate the talent population, right? But fundamentally, these people went to an IIT is by virtue of how the person performed in 12th, right? And not how the person performed the 4 years, right?
Right.
Whereas we should assess people not by the tag, but by more about their fitment to the job profile. It's going to be
Right.
slowly progressing towards it. But I think when you Google it, for example, they actually moved away from the campuses, if I'm not wrong, and they started having their own robust selection process. Anybody and everybody can apply. So long you clear our assessment process, you are in. Right? That's how they have started doing it.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a few outliers like that in ThoughtWorks. We had many years ago when we did a grad hiring program. We had a person who has a MBBS degree, a doctor, qualified doctor who was interested in computers and learned and came in and cleared the test. And he is still working with us. He's a Scala. He's one of our most celebrated developers. He's a Scala developer. So we have hired that and they have been successful. So not putting that education criteria barrier does help in many cases, but again, it depends on the context of the organization.
Just
Awesome,
on
awesome.
the second one, Naren, there was a question also on the upskilling, reskilling.
Correct.
Not at least I'm not a subject matter expert, but best of my knowledge about this the subject, I think there are. This is a space where there are enormous varieties of technology
Yeah,
solutions which
yeah.
enable the organizations to run this agenda virtually.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, plus one to that. I mean, at least this space of learning in the virtual world has really got a big boost after this COVID pandemic. And the number of startups and companies that are there are a lot of them doing are very good work in this
Yeah.
space.
And one of the things which TA, sorry to cut you, Savitha, one of the things which TA Fraternity can do in this space is to impart career guidance to the talent community, with not with an agenda to hire, but more of giving it back to the society. And that's also is a contribution more in line to the upskilling, reskilling of the talent population, right? So not wait, upskilling, reskilling is not something which is only once an employee joins and then you do it. We, in fact, in our organization last year, we launched career guidance program where we've been uh, mentoring talent community, external talent community on how they should prepare for interviews or how they should learn coding and so on and so forth. I think that's the one significant step every organization should take.
Correct. And also this the whole thing about reskilling employees in virtual world, whether it's the same or probably better outcomes. I see learning should come something from within that. Like you should be interested in upskilling yourself. But I also feel that the organization should enable and make sure and facilitate and make this happen. Otherwise, if you just have a good system in place where you can go virtually and learn, or maybe you're tying up with some of these training institutes or something, people may not actually go and do it unless you facilitate and make it happen. Like for example, in IBM, there was this whole goal that every IBMer at the end of the year had to complete 80 hours of learning, and that was a mandatory. It was completely that everyone should do it, and it was monitored by your teams. So that made people actually go out and use all the resources that was given to them to learn. So I think a little bit of facilitation and push also is definitely needed. Simply by having a technology solution for learning in the virtually might not bring a better outcome, is what I think. There should be some push and drive from the organization as well. Yeah.
Naren, back to you. Are you there?
Yeah. I think we lost him for a minute. Okay. All right.
Tanish, I'm not sure if you are in the conference. If you can, and maybe you can bring up other questions.
Some of the technology issues.
Okay, there's a
So
question
much.
from Upasna. I'll read it,
Yeah.
Savita. It's a question from Upasna. Do 30-60-90 strategy works in org hiring? As most of the hiring managers need only immediate joiners, how to plan and implement this 30-60-90 concept?
Oh, that is the time, joining time, is it? Is that what it means?
Yeah, I
30.
think that's what Upasna is referring to. I
Yeah.
mean, I think if
Um,
I'm not too familiar with this framework, but if you want to
yeah.
talk about it, yeah.
So, yeah, right. So in this framework, what happens is that It depends on the kind of numbers you're hiring. Like if everything cannot happen today, although hiring managers love to say that. So this is where a good stakeholder management and engagement with the business works. Like if we, getting the business plan ahead in time and then figuring out the priorities. Like it doesn't mean that everyone wants to hire all the 100 people in the same month. That may not be a best solution, because it's not just hiring, it's about onboarding, bringing them on board, and making them successful in the organization. So having a dialogue and finding out, definitely there can always be a first, second and third priority in any organization. If we sit down and talk to the business properly and really find out what are their business goals and why are they hiring, I think putting them in priority, and only then a 30, 60, 90 strategy will work, because then you can stagger your hiring and figure out and bring in people who have 60 days notice period and 30 days or 90 days notice period. It cannot happen that everyone should be hired in the same month or the same quarter. So I think that requires a little more uh, conversation with the businesses, and managing the stakeholders properly.
Great. I think I had a small internet hiccup, but just to add on to the discussion we were having, especially in terms of degree versus skill, right? And I really hope that we move towards that direction,
Yeah.
because to a great degree, we at Scalar are really trying to make that happen. Because we have placed over 1,000 people in the last 1 year, and a very interesting fact is a lot of people do not come from your, let's say, IIT BITS or NIT background, and they were still able to crack a lot of interviews with product organizations and captives. So that way, I mean, we really see this model where skills should be ideally important than the degree that you hold. But that leads me to a very interesting question, Savitha and Mohit, which I've also been thinking about for quite some time. Do you think, is there something that corporates can do to influence or change the curriculum that academia has? Do you see that? Is there a possibility there? And if yes, what do you think are some of the ways that corporates can actually influence academia to change the curriculum? Because to be very honest, I think the college curriculum has been the same for over a decade, and that is not something
Yeah.
the industry is looking at. So how do you think corporates can help? And of course, how do you think a company like Scalar can also probably potentially make a difference in this space?
So I think it's already happening, Naren. There are a lot of deemed universities that are working closely with the corporates to understand what are the trends and what are the what are the technologies what are in, and what needs to be incorporated in their curriculum. So that is already happening. There are a lot of universities, that regularly go and work with the corporates to understand the trends and incorporate them. And there are certain companies and organizations as well who sponsor those certain courses. For example, you want to hire people in open source, then you go and make sure that there's a course in that in the semesters, and then the company goes and even teaches it. They teach and they conduct workshops and make the students learn that, and also hire them later. So that kind of influencing of corporates to universities, as far as I understand, is already happening
Yeah,
in a big way. Yeah, in a big
it,
way.
it is happening, and there are a lot of organizations have already started
Yeah.
collaborating with the campuses,
Right.
setting up
Right.
labs,
Right.
being part of the curriculum. If you look at some of those professors, they come from the corporate background and moved into the teaching, right? From
Yes.
Scalar standpoint, Naren, I think we briefly discussed this a couple of months back. I think you could be the moderator between the industry and the campuses, where
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
could, more of a facilitator rather than moderator, where you could facilitate that connect between the two parties. I think there are colleges which reach out to the industry directly about seeking leaders who could engage with the students on various topics, etc. I think you could manage that channel, right? That's a huge opportunity which could work for all the parties.
Yeah.
Awesome, great. No, I think I definitely agree with that thought process. In
Naren, you
fact,
there?
Yeah.
yes, Mohit,
Yeah.
can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm saying definitely what you said is right, and in fact that's where we are trying to talk to corporates as well as universities at the same time, trying to figure out how can we be the facilitator to make that happen. And great, I think it's 11:30, and I think we are approaching towards the end. So firstly, I think Savitha and Mohit, really thanks for joining the session on a Saturday morning. I do understand it's a weekend, but personally for me, it's a great way to start the weekend, and we had a very interesting discussion. And I think there's a great amount of response from the viewers as well. Of course, we were unable to take all the questions. But what we will do, Mohit and Savita, is I will certainly share all these questions over email, and then we'll try and see how we can communicate and try and answer these
Yeah.
questions. But Oral, thanks a lot, Mohit, Savita, and of course, all the people who have tuned in Saturday morning in spite of being a weekend.
Thanks,
Mohit and Savita,
Naren.
any parting thoughts? Feel free to
No, I
add.
think it's an endless discussion. Unfortunately, there's
I'm
a time
sure.
limit to it. Naren, we can go on this. And our sincere apologies for the people who asked questions and we couldn't respond. But Savita and I, we both are active on LinkedIn. Don't hesitate to reach out to us if there's anything where we could provide our views. We would happy to do that. And thanks again for joining. Naren, wish you the very best to continue running this series.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mohit.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining on a Saturday morning. I know it's a long weekend and people will have plans, but it's nice that people are taking time to learn more and share their knowledge as well. So thanks, Mohit. Great talking to you, and Naren as well. So yeah, as Mohit mentioned, if you all have any questions, please do ping us on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'll be happy to answer that. So yeah, good. Thank you for inviting. It's been a great way to start the weekend, as Naren says. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome.
Happy weekend, everyone, and happy Republic Day as well.
Happy weekend, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks, Mohit.
Bye.
Thanks, Savita.
Bye.